Black, Tarik LaCour from Hook'emHeadlines.com, the Hook'em Horn Show, coming back at you all today with our Overreaction show on Monday for Texas's 35-6 win over BYU on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. I did my post-game reactions as always for this one, so I'll turn the floor over to y'all here in a second to get your initial takes on the BYU game. But Texas moves to 7-1, 4-1 in Big 12 play on the season. They got a big matchup coming up in Week 10 at home at DKR against Kansas State. Number 25 ranked Wildcats are in a 5-way tie for first place in the Big 12 standings, along with the Longhorns, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State. And so, we got a big November slate coming up. We'll talk about that a little bit in this show as well. Part of the overreactions are going to be a little bit more Big 12 centric. And, we got a loaded slate of games in the Big 12 this coming weekend. So I think it's a good time to look at that. But like I said, Tarik, Shane, I'll pass it over to y'all. What were your thoughts coming out of the BYU game?
Well, I was at the BYU game, so that game felt over as soon as Xavier Worthy took the punt back for a touchdown, because it was more than evident that BYU really didn't have the defense to stop Texas, and they didn't have the offense to move on Texas. And so the question was Texas going to score 30 points? Because if they got out of their own way in the red zone and things like that, or were they going to be held to under 30 because they couldn't get out of their own way? But it wasn't because BYU was going to stop them. Without Quinn Ewers, the offense still moved pretty well, had good moments. The red zone still remains a problem. I don't know how much of that was Sark just trying to get the team in a more attacking mode as he heads to the end of Big 12 play. How much of that was stubbornness? How much of that is Bert Auburn is in the doghouse? We don't know the answers to those questions. But overall, felt fine. I wish Quinn Ewers would be back this week. Looks like he won't be. I would feel a lot more confident in this game if he was back, because the types of turnovers that Malik Murphy made in the BYU game you will lose to Kansas State if you have that many turnovers. So those are my feelings. How about you, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, overall, you have to be happy with the result. Looking at the final 35-6, there's definitely some things that you need to clean up. But I think it's just a testament to Sark in year 3, what he's built, that, you can play a BYU team, not a ton of talent, but they're still 5-2 coming into this game. And you can play them with your backup quarterback, turning the ball over a couple times, getting stopped on the goal line a couple times, and you can still win that football game 35-6. I think that's a testament to what Sark has built and the talent throughout this whole roster, through the 2 and 3 deep as well. Had a lot of new guys mixing in as, we're trying to mix and match at the linebacker position and in the back end. But like Tarik mentioned, red zone offense still is very shaky, and that's something that will get you beat as well as the turnovers going forward. So certainly some things to clean up, but also a lot of positives coming out of this game. And at this point, we've said it. It's pretty much handle your own business, and you'll be in Arlington in early December, and you handle business there, and you'll probably be in the college football playoff. So every game that goes by that you win, that's just another check in the column. And right now, sitting at 7-1, you're 5 wins away from finishing 12-1 Big 12 champ and likely college football playoff team. So, keep knocking them down, and BYU is just another roadblock that Texas got through.
Here's something that's absolutely the case, though. No matter what happens, we will not have a losing season. Texas A&M cannot say that just yet. So there you are.
Yeah, reached 7 wins. So nice to think about at this point. It wasn't that long ago that we were in a much different situation. So thankful for that. And overall, there's a few points that y'all made that I wanted to follow up on, just because I was kind of doing my stat research heading into Kansas State, recapping BYU today. I'll touch on the red zone issues to start. So I did a little deep dive today, a statistical deep dive on, Texas's success between not even between the 20s, just outside of the red zone versus inside the red zone. Shy of running my own success rate calculation, which would have been very difficult to do. I just tried to put together a negative or a 0-yard negative play rate calculation. Texas has had, I believe it's 102 offensive plays this year in the red zone on offense. Do you want to guess how many of those plays have resulted in 0 or negative yards?
40.
Close. Yeah. It's 44.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, actually, I think it was 45. 45. It's actually coming in both phases a little bit. We're getting sacked. We've gotten sacked 3 times in the red zone. We turned the ball over twice in the red zone, I do believe, and we have twice because interception against OU and then the fumble last weekend. And then we've been pressured 12 times on 42 dropbacks. That's a lot. That's too high of a pressure rate in the red zone when a lot of times you're getting the ball out pretty fast, or at least that's generically the concept. Running the ball, we had, I think it was 23 stuffs on 61 attempts, I believe that was. That isn't as surprising as the struggles we've had in the passing game, but I think it's also indicative of, okay, why is Sark not passing the ball a little bit more in the red zone? I've got 2 theories on that. One, once JT Sanders gets healthier, I think you'll be able to target him a little bit more, but you saw why you can't target him with that kind of that bum ankle against OU. And then I think Adonai Mitchell is your best option in the red zone. I saw yesterday he's tied for the most red zone touchdown catches in the Big 12 of any wide receiver this season. He now has 5. I mean, he's just a good target to find on a multitude of different routes. He can create separation, slant, out route. If you just want to put him one-on-one. I don't know if Malik Murphy's there with the timing yet with Adonai, but certainly looked like they had a good connection on Saturday. So I think that's something that you could look to moving forward. We don't. Yeah, do y'all have anything else you want to add to the red zone woes? I don't know. Like, there's no like magic. I don't think there's any magic button you can press here to fix them. Jake Majors and JT Sanders getting healthier, I think, will help. And then once you get Quinn back, but
So I'll actually pose this question to Tarik. I'm curious what you think about this, because Sark clearly was trying to, prove to himself and prove to the team that, like, hey, we are physical enough. We can push these guys back. We can run this in. And to me, that was a little frustrating. It's like, stop it's like the definition of insanity, doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. But he seems
Einstein
like
actually didn't say that, by the way. But
is that not true? I'll have to.
No, someone said that, but
Yeah.
I know that only because now I work in philosophy of physics and I work on Einstein, so I know he didn't say that. But keep going.
Okay. But yeah, so I think that it's just frustrating that, Sark he keeps thinking that we're going to get this inside push and you give it to JB and he's going to get in when it really hasn't happened all season. And, I think at some point in time, you just got to get creative. Like this is why people call you one of the best play callers in the country. You should be able to scheme open, especially JT, Adonai. If they're one-on-one, they're winning those matchups down there. So I don't understand why you keep pushing it in. And now, like, I like the switch to Savion Red, but you're doing the same thing. You're just still trying to slam it down the defense's throats, which really hasn't worked.
Yeah, there is a type of ball that Sark likes to play, and I would affectionately call it big boy ball, which is you like to just push people back and keep doing that. The problem with that is you don't have the guard play and you don't have the type of power back that allows you to do that. You don't have Derrick Henry back there. You don't have TJ Yeldon. You don't have Najee Harris. Now, Cedric Baxter, I think, can be those things when he's fully healthy and when he's been able to work on his body some more, but he's not doing that. There were times, for example, in the Oklahoma game where I didn't understand. I was like, Sark, why don't you call like a quarterback rollout after when they're just going to go for the center? So just roll it out, like roll someone out to either catch it and then either let Quinn throw it in or run it in. Those types of things. I get why you can't do that with Malik Murphy because Murphy's not the most fleet of foot. But I think it's mostly just stubbornness and also kind of a thinking of like, I know we can do this eventually, but I don't want to say to myself, we can't do it right now. So that seems to be the angel and the devil that are on Sark's shoulders saying like, yeah, this is what we want to do eventually. And like the angel's like, yeah, but you can't do that right now. And the devil's like, but you never know. So that would be my thought. What do you think, Andrew?
Any precedent to just saying spread him out 4 wide and maybe just try an inside zone?
Seems like lots of people do that, but it'd be better if you had. It'd be, this is where you really wish you had KJ Lacey, because KJ Lacey could just run sideways on people, but Malik Murphy, he's not doing that. I don't think.
I even think Arch Manning's going to be really good in the red zone too, though. He's good at rolling out. He's got some speed.
Yeah, that's true. That was something that I was really noticing in this game was I'm like, Malik Murphy has really heavy feet.
Yeah.
It's almost like you could feel the ground shake. That guy runs to the side. It's like, yeah.
Here's my thing, right? We have 16 of our attempts in the red zone out of 61 rushing attempts were inside zone plays. We're averaging 4 yards a carry, have 2 touchdowns, only 3 stuffs. If we run, like, let's say any sort of gap scheme between here, let me look up gap scheme between the A gaps here, or A and B gaps. We're just getting stacked up. Yeah, so when we decide to run any sort of gap inside, we have 12 attempts, 12 yards, 4 stuffs. We should stop doing that. Well, like that's part of the thing too. It's like sometimes you look at the stats and it's so simple when you see it that it's like that's how you know Sark's getting hard-headed. When we've run 16 inside zone plays, it's resulted in 64 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 yards per carry, and a stuff rate of what, 10-15%. Whereas when we're running really any sort of gap scheme or any sort of gap scheme between the tackles, you got 12 attempts, 12 yards, 4 stuffs. Like, and I'm sure because it's at least 3 drives this season that I remember at the goal line where we didn't get a touchdown. 2 of them I remember being goal line stands. One, you have the Red Cat last weekend where Savion Red does the same thing every play. And I'm not blaming that on Savion Red. I'm blaming that on Sark. Like, you can't run the same play every single time. And then Jonathan Brooks getting stacked up a million times against OU with 3 straight plays. So I don't know. And we even had some issues against Baylor, but that turned out to be okay because we won that game by a lot. I don't know. That would be my first thought is like, to some degree, you got to simplify it. You got to go back to the drawing board, do what you do well. And you're doing a lot well when you're spreading teams out a little bit and you're able to run the ball after establishing the passing game. That's kind of Sark's whole offensive mantra. So I think you start with that. Start maybe trying to spread them out, run some inside zone, see where it gets you. This Kansas State front, this sounds like we're previewing Kansas State at this point. I'll keep this brief, but this Kansas State front's a little bit smaller. Kansas State might try to load the box this weekend, but it won't be as effective as when BYU loads the box because BYU does have a lot of smart linebackers and bigger linemen. Kansas State isn't as big up front. They play a 3-down front, whereas BYU played a 4-down front. So we should be able to get some better push along the offensive line. You got another week to get Jake Majors healthy. I think part of the solution here, you do not need to overcomplicate it or try to trick yourself more than you have already. So that's my thoughts.
I also just don't think Kansas State has the playmakers that they did last year.
They don't. Yeah, that's a good point.
They played really disciplined football. But I think against Texas's defense, you're going to have some playmakers, especially when you have Ryan Watts healthy. I mean, you saw how big of a difference that made. Like,
yeah,
you couldn't do anything. It's like, oh. And I kept thinking, I was like, when was the one time we didn't see this? Oh, or 2 times, Houston and Oklahoma. So,
yeah, it's just his ability to keep the play in front of him and that you don't need that extra safety help or you don't need any sort of like he just makes life easier when he's in the game compared to, maybe when you got an injured Terrence Brooks or injured Gavin Holmes. We brought in Jahdae Barron in the second half against Houston and he played really well.
Gavin Holmes, man, he's getting abused.
Yeah, he is. I think he technically plays the deep ball okay, but at this point, yeah, teams are starting to pick on him a little bit. I don't know. Terrence Brooks and Brian Watts, they were both really good, and Malik Muhammad's going to get there. So it's
I
kind of a
wouldn't be all
tough.
that averse to like moving Terrence Brooks or Malik Muhammad to safety alongside Jaron Thompson from time to time, or just let Derek Williams play the whole game at this point because he makes plays. When he makes some bad mistakes, but it's like, yeah, but you're making less and less of them each week.
Well, yeah, and he's going to be a starting safety next year, and he's a better option at this point on most play. I thought Taff has played decently well since like in the second half against Houston and then against BYU. I think he's been average to decent this year. I just, Keaton Crawford, he's good. He's good at blowing up the ball carrier, and that's about it. He's very fast. He's a special teams gunner. I just mean on defense. Getting defensive stops, he can do really well, but in coverage, he gets beat a lot. So, okay, let me go back to my BYU overreactions. So, kind of get back on topic here. So, some of these I'll keep pretty brief, but I want to give a shout here. T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, they were the two highest graded defensive tackles in the Power 5 in week 9. I don't know if that's necessarily the first time that's happened this fall. T'Vondre Sweat is the highest graded interior defensive lineman in the Power 5 this season. Byron Murphy's not too far off. And I want to particularly talk about T'Vondre Sweat here. I mentioned in my overreactions that I think he's a solidified early round pick in the NFL draft. I know that a lot of draft boards have him as like a middle round pick, maybe third round, like late day 3 at the earliest. But I mean, T'Vondre Sweat, he's a guy that's just going to be a home wrecker. I think even in the NFL, I know that he's probably going to probably have to get in a little bit better shape, lose some weight, get the body down. But good wingspan, great strength, good in run defense. And I think one of the more disruptive interior pass rushers in the Big 12, which there was some inconsistency in that regard in his game in his first 3 or 4 years on campus. And so Byron Murphy, I believe he led the team in quarterback pressures this weekend. He leads all defensive tackles in the Big 12 in quarterback pressures this season. So he's been really good as well, just being a disruptor up front. Y'all have anything you want to add on T'Vondre Sweat or Byron Murphy?
I'm glad they're on our team.
Yeah, very true. T'Vondre Sweat had a run stop percentage of over 21% in week 9, which is pretty incredible considering he didn't miss any tackles either. Shout out to him. I know BYU does not have a very good run game, but he did a nice job holding them big because I actually don't think our run defense was all that stout considering how much BYU has struggled on the ground this season. My next overreaction, this one might be a little bit more to talk about here. I say that Adonai Mitchell was the best receiver is the best receiver on the team. He led the team in receiving yards, 3 catches, 59 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was one of only 2 Big 12 wide receivers over the weekend that had multiple touchdown catches. And he played a big role in getting Malik Murphy his first career touchdown pass. Well, caught both of his touchdowns, but Adonai Mitchell now has career high in catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. 29 catches for 427 yards, 7 receiving touchdowns, leads the team in touchdown catches. I don't think it's super far-fetched to say that he's the team's best wide receiver right now. I think Xavier Worthy is probably the most versatile and dynamic weapon, but I think that in terms of pure pass catcher, pure receiver weapon, I think Adonai Mitchell might be our best.
I think pure pass catchers, I think you have more of an argument there. It still frustrates the hell out of me that he refuses to block on the outside. And we know a lot.
Even when he's 2 feet taller and 20 pounds heavier than everyone he's standing in front of.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And luckily Texas, rolled this week. But like I said, if I was Jordan Whittington, man, I would be pissed. Like, this guy comes in, probably getting a bigger NIL bag than you, and he just doesn't block. And Sark continues to run screens to the side that Mitchell is on. Like, all right, fine, he doesn't want to block. Just throw him on the weak side and have Witt and Worthy on one side and run your wide receiver screens over there. But Sark continues to do it, which is frustrating. But yeah, in general, I mean, his touchdown catch on the slant, the 9-yard slant, incredible hands because Murphy threw an absolute laser in there. And if that ball's
the only
dropped,
way he knows how.
exactly. And if that ball's dropped, then you got second and goal from the 9, and we know the red zone struggles. I think that was after they had been stopped 2 times in a row. So that was pretty big to snag that ball. It looked like kind of like a routine pitch and catch, but that was a fantastic catch. And yeah, I mean, he's a terrific receiver. Only going to be in Austin for 1 year, and hopefully he can help us achieve our goals. But yeah, he makes some business decisions out there. I'll just say that.
I still think Xavier Worthy's the best receiver on the team. Just his ability to score from anywhere on the field. I think, I don't think Xavier Worthy had dropped a pass this season, or maybe like 1 or 2.
He hadn't in Big 12 play, but I think he might have actually been credited with the drop last weekend. He had some catchable balls.
Oh, wait, he dropped one against Alabama. He dropped a touchdown in the red zone. Yeah, I think I'd still give it to Xavier Worthy, although Adonai Mitchell is very consistent, but some of the things he's consistent at are not good things, like the blocking. That's got to stop. So I'll say that's an overreaction.
This is one thing that I kind of settled in my brain over the weekend. And I know that he's not ever been looked at it like this, but Xavier Worthy really is not. It might be one of his most average qualities, considering he's got so many above average to elite traits as a wide receiver, especially in the modern game. It might be his most average quality that he really struggles coming down with a lot of like contested catches. Not even like 50-50 balls, but like if it's thrown into a tight window, it feels like he has a hard time adjusting sometimes. I think there were 4 catchable balls. It was 3 or 4 in this game. I'd have to go look and check to see for sure, but 3 or 4 catchable balls in this one that he did not bring down. Not necessarily drops, but that's y'all saw though there was that contested deep ball in the end zone that Murphy gave him a good chance catching in the back.
There was a couple like 3rd and shorts, like 3rd and 5 plays where he's running quick outs that could have been. It was like a decent play by the defense. Ball wasn't the perfectly thrown ball, but he also didn't come up with it. Yeah, so I definitely see what you're saying. I think he was targeted 10 times against BYU and only came down with 4 catches. The thing is with Quinn in there is they have such a good rapport, and Worthy creates such solid separation that he doesn't have to make a lot of contested catches. But now you see with Malik in there, everything's a half second slower. The defensive backs can get in there, and then you got to have strong hands to secure that. So certainly this is nowhere near the conversation we were having after the Washington game. And granted, we know he had a broken hand at this point, so it's not that big of an issue. But yeah, it's still something to look at, and which is why you saying Adonai Mitchell is the best receiver on the team. Certainly a little bit of an overreaction, but not too far-fetched.
Yeah, and this is my thing with Xavier Worthy is that I think you got guys like Adonai Mitchell, JT Sanders that are going to be more quarterback-friendly targets, especially for, a guy that's going to be making his second career start this weekend. So, yeah, Xavier Worthy, 7 catchable balls, 4 receptions. This is kind of interesting. He was the only person that had that had a catchable ball thrown his way last weekend that he didn't catch, and he had 3 of them. So I guess that's part of my point. And I know that he had obviously the big excuse for this last season. I think he is having a good season this year. I'm just thinking in the way of a pure pass catcher. I would prefer more targets going to Adonai Mitchell, especially in contested situations. Same thing with Jatavion Sanders. Here is my next overreaction. This one, again, more player specific. I said Jahdae Barron is Texas's most important defensive player. I don't know how much of an overreaction this is, but I know some people might say T'Vondre Sweat, Jalen Ford, Ryan Watts potentially. I think Jahdae Barron is one of the best defensive backs, maybe in the nation, definitely in the Big 12. He's having a sensational season again. Leads the Big 12 among defensive backs in defensive stops and in coverage. He's just doing a tremendous job. He's looked excellent the last 2 weeks, I guess game and a half since he only played the second half against Houston. But He's just all over the place. He played a big role in getting Michael Taff his second interception in as many weeks. Had a couple of nice defensive stops over the weekend. I don't know if y'all have any conjecture to that.
No, I think he's such a good player that it's not even an overreaction. We've been banging the Jahdae Barron drum since before the season, and like you mentioned, just for the coaches to put him in against Houston in the second half, that shows how much they think he can affect the game. So, yeah, I completely agree with your take.
I'll move on here. This is where the overreaction starts to get a little spicier. I said Malik Murphy has the best deep ball in the Big 12. Maybe not an overreaction given that there's not all that many quarterbacks that have a really good deep ball in the Big 12. One of the things that kind of caught my eye looking through some of the PFF stats last weekend, Malik Murphy had tied for the most big time throws in the Big 12 with 3, and he led in big time throw percentage. I think that's one of those like kind of key stats where it's like, okay, he kind of settled in. He made all 3 of those big time throws after the first quarter. And I think that depending on how the Kansas State game goes early on, if you're starting to get the offense in a good rhythm, and Kansas State defensive backs aren't very fast, I think they're going to be playing a lot of man coverage too, because they're probably going to be having to load the box early on to prevent the run. I think you could see, Sark let Malik Murphy, expand the offense in the intermediate and deep passing game a little bit as the game progresses. Again, assuming that Texas gets off to a good start, and kind of see how the game plan develops as it did against BYU, where you kind of see Malik Murphy make these strides, get more comfortable, and you can see the offense open up. Now, to counter, I know that Malik Murphy also had a little bit of a flailing deep ball on that pass to Adonai Mitchell. He kind of threw it off his back foot. The mechanics on a lot of his deeper throws in this game, or in the BYU game, weren't fantastic. Throwing off his back foot a little bit too much. But overall, I thought he was good. I think there's reason for optimism moving forward, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a concern that he throws off his back foot so much. I think that might just be first real snaps in there and a little uncomfortable in the pocket. And maybe if he was more of a running quarterback, that's something where you'd see him just tuck it and run. But and that Adonai Mitchell, there's been a lot of discourse on Twitter about that throw. If you look at it, Murphy timed it perfectly, threw the ball, released it exactly when it needed to be. Mitchell wasn't even looking and wasn't out of his break yet. It just happened that the field was a little bit condensed. Ended up being a 30-yard throw. He just a little too much air under it. But for the most part, that's kind of right where you want to be. So that was pretty impressive. But yeah, against the defense that's able to exploit the Texas interior line, and Murphy is going to struggle because he's thrown off his back foot even when there's phantom pressure. So if you get real pressure in there, I think that could be an issue. Certainly a cause for concern and something that could lead to more turnovers. So, I mean, certainly in overreaction, I think, eventually he could develop into the best deep ball thrower in the Big 12. But yeah, right now, I think you got to like what you see from the one touchdown to Mitchell, but other than that, there's still a lot to work on.
Tarik, I feel like you got something to add on that.
I'm not anointing anybody anything after one game. Sorry. I think he has a nice deep ball. I think he has a very strong arm. I'm excited to see what he does this week, but that's another overreaction. Can't go there.
I would like to see what happens.
Also, I think Quinn Ewers throws a very nice deep ball now. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
I think he beat the deep ball charges against a pretty elite defense in Alabama. As I keep watching Alabama, they just keep getting better and better every week, which makes that win all the more impressive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would like to see Malik have the chance to throw maybe a deep ball or two with a clean pocket. I mean, he just didn't get much of a chance to really show what he can do throwing the deep ball. Like I don't know if I had mentioned it earlier. I meant to say that, Shane, I think you said it, that, that one deep ball touchdown to Adonai Mitchell, he was under pressure. And so, anyway, my last overreaction that I had from the BYU game, that I got from the BYU game is that, and I think this leads into some type of discourse to more generic Big 12 play and what's going on. Tarik, I know you got to get going soon, so we'll get on this overreaction, then get going here before too long. But I said that Texas will dominate the rest of Big 12 play. I think that, yes, this is obviously an overreaction, but
I'm gonna jump in now and just say no, no. It's just we can't do this. I'm not saying that Texas isn't the most talented team of the 4 teams that they have to play. I'm not saying that they shouldn't win all 4. I think that they can. But when you have a backup quarterback, you don't know if Quinn's coming back. You don't know how Quinn will look when he comes back. Just too many variables for you to say you should dominate. And I think that if Malik is leading the team for a much more significant amount of time, eventually some defense is going to say, okay, we're going to make Malik beat us. So you have to do that. I don't think he had to do that against BYU. I don't know if Kansas State has the defense to do that, but I'm not so sure I could say that about Iowa State. So
yeah, I think just the
overreaction.
Yeah, and if Quinn was in the lineup right now, I think a little more feasible. But Malik wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but his performance left you leaving Saturday's game saying, like Tarik said at the beginning, I really hope Quinn's back this Saturday. Like Malik, sure, it was a decent outing, but you really hope that Quinn is back sooner rather than later. And right now, with a backup quarterback, it's just impossible to predict Texas to dominate the rest of the way. With their history, what we've seen this year, specifically against Houston, and just some tough games in Kansas State, Iowa State, and even at TCU, and wrapping up with Tech, all games that could give you some problems. There's no cakewalk. So I appreciate the sentiment and think there's a tiny % chance that it could happen, but I certainly will not be taking that side.
I think a lot of the game this weekend, and so we'll get into our more realistic preview of the Kansas State game this weekend, or excuse me, later this week. But here's my thoughts on this: is that I actually do think that Texas could come up with a convincing victory against Kansas State. Maybe you get Quinn Ewers back down the stretch, and you can work from there. I actually think that Texas can beat TCU pretty good, even with Malik Murphy at quarterback. It depends on how the rest of the team shows out in Fort Worth, but this is a TCU team that if you get them on a down week, I'm sure they'll be motivated to play Texas. It's never easy to play in Fort Worth. I'll actually be at that game. So I get it. But, again, if you get TCU on a down week, then you can still put up a good amount of points. You can run the ball on them pretty well. You can get Quinn back for the last maybe 2 or 3 games. I think that there's a way you can get a convincing win against Kansas State, and then that you can round out the season, hopefully getting Quinn back healthy for at least Iowa State. I think getting Quinn back, can we agree on this, that getting Quinn back for the Iowa State game would be the most important thing for his return to the lineup?
I'd like him back for TCU, but sure.
Yeah, it does seem like a little bit of a short turnaround, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so that's fair. You'd like him at every road game possible, so I get that sentiment.
I think we're at the point where when he's cleared, you play him. Like I don't care if he's 80%, you get Quinn on the field. Just his demeanor this season and his ability to control the offense is much needed, especially when you travel on the road. So. Yeah, we need Quinn back sooner rather than later. That said, I do think Malik can beat Kansas State this weekend. So,
all right, Tarik, before you get going here, because Shane, I do want to have there's a couple more points I wanted to have on the Big 12 before we get up and running. But so each of the top 6 teams in the Big 12 right now are playing each other this weekend. It's a pretty loaded slate. Let's go around and do picks for the 3 games right quick. Early picks. These do not have to be scores or anything like that. These are just our early picks for the Texas-Kansas State game, Bedlam, and then Iowa State-Kansas. Tarik, I'll let you go first on that.
I'm taking your Cowboys to win Bedlam and give Oklahoma their second loss. What were the other 2?
Kansas, Iowa State, and then the Texas-Kansas State game. You don't have to give scores for any of them.
I'll take Kansas and Kansas, Iowa State. And the last was Texas, Kansas State, right?
Yeah.
And I'll take us to win Kansas that game.
Okay. Shane?
Yeah, this might change as the week progresses, but I'm going both road teams. I think OU goes into Stillwater and beats the Pokes, and I think Kansas goes into Ames and beats Iowa State, and then I'll take Texas at home. Um, but yeah, they're all super intriguing games, and this is a big week for Brett Yormark. A huge week. Like this, if Oklahoma and Texas go down this week, that man is smiling wherever he is. I guess it could.
The only
This
man who will be happier than Brett Yormark was Dwight Schrute when he finally became manager of in the office.
No kidding. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Do you think Houston got Brett Yormark to put on the pads for one snap and he got a sack against Quinn Ewers and it's all a conspiracy so that we would lose to Kansas State and his little deputy?
I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
So I'm going to go Iowa State. I think that in Ames they're rolling right now. I know that Kansas is a good team, but I think that I think that Iowa State's got something cooking right now, and I think they're a really hard team to beat when they're at home. I'm going to pick OU to beat Oklahoma State. I just, the last time that either OU or Oklahoma State won the game when they were underdogs in the pregame betting line was 2014 when Oklahoma State had Tyreek Hill return a last minute touchdown, punt return for touchdown. Anyway, yeah, so OU's a betting favorite. I could see Oklahoma State pulling this one out. I think so much of that game comes down to the health of Danny Stutzman and I don't know, potentially Dylan Gabriel. I've heard that his hand might be injured. He didn't look great throwing the ball in the second half against Kansas.
So for Texas's sake, but I am of the opinion you root for your team to handle its business, and I will always root against Oklahoma, no matter who they play or no matter how it affects Texas. Unless it's like last week of the season, I need Oklahoma to win for Texas to also make the Big 12 championship. But in this specific game, if you're looking at it, it's probably more advantageous for Texas if the Sooners win because you don't play the Pokes. And so that if you're tied with them in conference record, that's going to come down to some tiebreakers. Whereas if Oklahoma loses a second, one loss, and essentially you need them to lose again, if that makes sense. So you'd rather just get Oklahoma State kind of out of the picture and just say, all right, Oklahoma, you already have the tiebreaker against us. If we win out, we're going to be in there regardless. So now we're saying if we take a second loss, then Oklahoma has that tiebreaker over us, and Oklahoma State's now a player as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's Kansas, Iowa State. I think Iowa State wins that. Texas, Kansas State. I do think Texas wins the game this weekend. I've been trying to fumble around a score prediction in my mind. I know that's coming later this week, but anyway. I don't really have much else to add for this. I think for Texas down the stretch, stay healthy. It's nice that I had to draw up an injury report for the game last weekend that had 11 names on it. And my least favorite thing really in covering football is covering injuries. So it's nice that we really only have 3 or 4 to talk about this week. I don't know. I think Jalen Catalon is really the only guy that is up in the air for this weekend. He got hurt against OU, and originally Sark said that injury was day to day, and it's 3.5 weeks later now, and he's still dealing with an injury issue. So hopefully we get him back. We need as much help at safety as we can get. That's all I really got on it, though. I don't know if you have any other parting shots you want to add.
Yeah, no, I think we knew. I mean, we talked about it in the off season when we got Catalon. Like any play you get out of him is good because of his injury history, and we were kind of just building in that he was going to miss some games. I think when we were saying that, we didn't realize how dire the safety issue would become. And now that it is a real issue on this team, you kind of really need him back. But that's just kind of the battle that you took with bringing in Catalan. Terrific player, but he's always been pretty banged up. So if you can get him back, potentially against TCU or against Iowa State and keep him healthy, even just for the final couple of games, that'll be a big boost if and when that does happen. But yeah, in general, it's going to be an awesome weekend in the Big 12. Like we mentioned, the games we just went over, those are the top 6 teams in the conference. 5 of them all tied for first place at 4-1. If Texas loses this weekend, it's going to be some tough sledding to end up in Arlington. So it's not like a pseudo elimination game or anything like that, but you're just going to have to be doing a lot of scoreboard watching in the final 3 weeks if the Horns drop this one to K-State at home. And of course, we'll have the preview video later in the week. I do think Texas matches up pretty well with what the Wildcats want to do. But that's always a really frisky team. Thankfully, we get them at home this year. I know we went into Manhattan and won that game, but this is a game that you really need at home, especially with a backup quarterback starting the football game. But exciting nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, saving grace for this weekend, Kansas State is 0-2 on the road against ranked opponents this season. So, sorry, Oklahoma State was not ranked. Let's say 0-2 against, teams with winning records now, because their other win on the road was against Texas Tech. So, but they also lost to Mizzou on the road. So they've been much better at home than on the road this season. But we'll talk about that more later this week. Stay tuned on the site. We ended on the brief injury update here. For more in depth on that, I got an article coming to the site tonight, so I'll post that link in the description below. But anyway, for Andrew Miller, Shane Black, Hook'emHeadlines.com, that's pretty much it. Welcome.